You know that feeling when like a really massive new technological leap drops, like a highly advanced AI model or maybe some sudden breakthrough in genetic engineering?
Oh, yeah. Like
Yeah.
the world changes overnight.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And while everyone is marveling at the sheer power of it, there is this quiet underlying dread, just this whispering question of whether we are actually, ready for the power we just unlocked.
Like we're moving too fast.
Yeah, exactly. And we tend to treat that anxiety like it is a distinctly modern phenomenon, like it's just a byproduct of the modern tech sector moving fast and breaking things. But for today's deep dive, we are going into a stack of historical and theological analyses centered on a profoundly ancient text.
The Book of Enoch.
The Book of Enoch, yes. And specifically, a group of celestial beings known as the Watchers. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore a framework that, honestly, it turns our entire understanding of human progress totally upside down.
It really does. It's a total paradigm shift.
It is. Because we are going to examine a highly detailed narrative where the sudden leaps in ancient human civilization, so things like metallurgy, writing, astrology, they were not viewed as the triumph of human genius.
Not at all.
No, they were recorded as a literal, premeditated cosmic crime, basically an illicit technology transfer by rogue divine beings who intentionally collapsed the developmental timeline.
And I mean, that framing fundamentally shifts how we view the ancient mind,
Yeah.
right? We are looking at a society that surveyed the tools making them quote unquote civilized and felt this profound existential unease about it.
Yeah, a deep suspicion of their own progress.
Exactly. And they codified that unease into a sprawling legal indictment against these beings. And the psychological depth of this narrative is really what makes it so enduring, because the Book of Enoch introduces the leader of these 200 watchers, this being named Samyaza,
Right, Samyaza.
which ironically carries the meaning, my name has seen, or heaven has seen.
Wow, so his very name implies oversight.
Right. He is defined by divine oversight, yet he becomes the architect of the ultimate rebellion. And this rebellion, it does not start as a spontaneous mistake. It's not a moment of weakness.
Oh, it's calculated.
It begins as a highly calculated conspiracy.
And that structural element of a conspiracy is what stands out immediately to me. Like, Samyaza's core sin is highly organizational. He gathers these 200 watchers, and he lays out the plan to descend to Earth, but he explicitly admits his fear.
He knows what he's doing.
He does. He tells them he knows the act is forbidden, he knows the consequences will be severe, and he is just terrified that they will all back out at the last minute and leave him to bear the punishment entirely alone. He has total, complete self-awareness regarding the boundary he is about to cross.
Which completely eliminates any defensive ignorance. Samyaza possesses full agency here. He has a complete comprehension of the fallout. But because of his fear of isolation and that guilt, he requires a mechanism to ensure absolute compliance from the other 199 beings.
He needs collateral.
Exactly. He needs a way to guarantee that once they cross that threshold, there is no turning back for anyone.
So to lock them in, he gathers the entire faction on the summit of Mount Hermon. And the geographic precision here is just chilling to read. The text pinpoints modern Jabal al-Sheikh,
Sitting at an elevation of 2,814 meters.
right on the modern Syria-Lebanon border. He gets them all up on this summit to swear a collective irrevocable oath, binding themselves by a mutual curse.
That's intense.
It reads almost identically to a modern corporate conspiracy, or like an organized crime syndicate demanding a blood oath from its lieutenants. They are taking the sacred concept of a covenant and weaponizing it to commit a completely corrupt act.
Well, the author is deliberately layering the severity of the crime here. The physical descent to Earth is a spatial transgression, a breach of cosmic boundaries.
Right.
But the oath on Mount Hermon compounds that original sin by invoking divine witness to seal a corrupt pact. It frames the origin of earthly corruption as a deliberate coup. They are not merely falling, they are organizing.
They're unionizing for corruption. And while that physical boundary breach was the inciting incident, the permanent damage-like, the reason human history was irrevocably altered was what they unpacked from their cosmic suitcases once they actually arrived.
The forbidden tech.
The tech, yes. The text does not just offer a vague complaint that these beings made humans evil. It lays out a highly specific line-item charge sheet naming exactly which watcher taught what specific skill to humanity.
It functions entirely as a legal syllabus of forbidden arts. I mean, the text details Samyaza alongside a watcher named Amazarach teaching sorcery and root cuttings.
Which is essentially magical herbalism, right?
Basically, yeah. And then it lists Armaros, who taught the resolving of enchantments, so the counterspells. And it is really vital to note that the text views the counterspells as equally problematic to the spells themselves.
Which totally makes sense, because both require manipulating the natural order rather than just submitting to it.
Exactly.
Then the text introduces an entire specialized faculty, just dedicated to the skies. You've got Barakihal, Kokabiel, Tamiel, Danil, Ezekiel, Shamsiel, and Sariel.
A whole department of astronomy.
A literal department. They taught the signs of the sun, the moon, the clouds, and the lightning. This is astrology and astronomy in its divination form. They are handing humans this illusion of cosmic predictive power.
Giving them the illusion of control.
Yes. And then there's Kazdeja, who taught dark medical knowledge, specifically the arts of abortion and of striking children in the womb. When you lay all of this out, astrology, herbalism, counterspells, it raises a massive question about the underlying theology for you as a reader. Like, why are these specific disciplines viewed as world-ending corruption?
Well, the theology is not necessarily arguing that observing the stars or understanding the medicinal properties of roots are inherently evil in a vacuum.
Right, it's not the object itself.
No, the crime is the premature nature of the knowledge. These watchers collapse a developmental timeline that was intended to unfold gradually over millennia. Every item on that charge sheet represents a form of knowledge that grants humans sudden, unearned power over nature, over other humans, or over the unseen world.
It really paints a picture of humanity being handed the cheat codes to the universe before even understanding the rules of the game.
That's a great way to put it.
It is like handing a loaded firearm or, I don't know, a fully unlocked smartphone with unlimited internet access to a toddler.
Oh, absolutely.
The object itself, the gun, the phone, the knowledge of root cuttings, is just a tool. But the recipient completely lacks the moral framework and the neurological or societal development to handle the power it grants. The power arrives long before the wisdom to wield it does.
That analogy perfectly captures the catastrophic nature of the event. The ancient mind recognized that skipping developmental milestones destroys the organism. When you grant a primitive society the ability to predict celestial movements or manipulate biology without the accompanying ethical maturity, you do not elevate that society, you fracture it.
You break it. And while manipulating nature and biology makes logical sense as a corrupting force, there is one item on this syllabus of forbidden tech that completely shatters our modern expectations of what evil actually looks like.
Oh, this is the most fascinating part.
It really is, because we can wrap our heads around sorcery and dark medicine being bad. But then the text introduces a watcher named Penemue, and Penemue's great cosmic crime, the act that ruined humanity, was teaching the use of ink and paper. He taught humanity how to write.
The text is so explicit about this. It states that Penemue taught mankind to understand writing, and because of this, quote, numerous have erred from eternity to eternity. The underlying claim is that humans were not created for the purpose of confirming their good faith with pen and ink.
Okay, I have to push back on the sheer irony of this concept here, because we are literally discussing a theology preserved in a written manuscript,
Right.
transmitted across millennia by scribes copying ink onto parchment. The Book of Enoch is using the forbidden tool of writing to condemn the forbidden tool of writing. How does an ancient author justify that paradox?
It is a profound, quiet irony. But unpacking it really requires diving into the mechanics of oral versus written cultures. The ancient author is not arguing that literacy itself is literally a demon.
Okay, so it's not the alphabet that's evil.
No, the argument is that the written word fundamentally alters human psychology by enabling a specific, highly durable kind of deception. Just think about how a purely oral culture functions. In a village without writing, truth is entirely relational.
You have to look at the person.
Exactly. A promise or a contract relies on looking someone in the eye. The weight of your word is completely tethered to your physical presence and your community reputation.
So if you lie, the lie is isolated to you, and the community can immediately weigh that lie against your character.
Exactly that dynamic. But writing introduces a terrifying new mechanic, which is the fixing of testimony. Writing allows you to separate the knowledge from the knower. You can manufacture a false certainty.
Wow.
A person can write down a lie on a piece of parchment, and that piece of parchment can travel to another city, or it can outlive the author by centuries. The lie gains this unearned, disembodied authority simply by virtue of being written down.
Because it looks official.
Right. Penemue gave humans the ability to detach truth from human relationship, which the ancient mind saw as a profound vulnerability. It allowed deception to become immortal.
That mechanism sounds incredibly similar to how we view disembodied information on the internet today.
Oh, 100%.
Like algorithms pushing text that has absolute authority but zero human accountability. Penemue fundamentally changed how we record truth and how we think. But there is another watcher who changed the physical reality of how we live, how we consume, and how we kill. Yes, and the text lays the heaviest burden of blame entirely on his shoulders, even more than Samyaza, who was the architect of the conspiracy.
We are talking about the second in command here. The text singles him out with a staggering allocation of blame. It literally states, the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him, ascribe all sin.
All sin, that is massive. And when you look at what Azazel actually taught, it is this bizarre, catastrophic pairing of technologies.
Yeah.
On one hand, he taught metallurgy and the making of weapons.
Yeah.
Swords, knives, shields, breastplates.
Right, the tools of war.
But on the other hand, he taught cosmetics, the beautifying of the eyelids with antimony, the use of precious stones, jewelry, and bodily adornment. He introduces swords and shields, and he pairs it with makeup and jewelry. It feels like he is attacking human innocence from two entirely different angles.
Well, he is attacking the core of human relation by objectifying the world. Together, metallurgy and cosmetics represent the transition from egalitarian innocence to a really complex, destructive civilization.
How so?
Azazel did not just hand over physical objects. He installed a new psychological operating system of vanity and violence. Let's look at the mechanics of this pairing. Cosmetics and jewelry represent the commodification of beauty.
Making it a resource.
Yes. It introduces self-consciousness and turns physical appearance into a tool for social manipulation and lust. You are objectifying yourself to conquer others socially.
And then metallurgy is the ultimate objectification of the earth and your fellow man.
Yes, exactly. Metallurgy requires tearing open the earth, extracting resources, and hoarding them, which immediately creates economic stratification. And then forging those metals into weapons creates the capacity for organized killing at an industrial scale.
So they go hand in hand.
They really do. Azazel gave humanity the desire to conquer through vanity, and the physical tool is to execute that conquest through violence.
And that psychological shift is permanent. There's a deeply unsettling reality about intellectual corruption that separates it from just a physical transgression.
What do you mean?
Well, if someone commits a physical crime, you can punish them or contain them. But as the text implies, you cannot unteach metallurgy.
Right. The knowledge is out there.
Once a society learns how to crack open rocks, melt them down in fire, and forge a sword, that innocence is gone forever. The timeline is permanently shattered. You cannot put the sword back into the stone.
That permanence is exactly why Azazel bears the ultimate guilt. He fundamentally altered the human capacity for destruction. And the impact of his specific teachings is so profound that it echoes loudly into the canonical Hebrew Bible.
Oh yeah, this is huge.
There is a direct mechanical connection between this specific watcher and the ritual practices of ancient Israel.
This is honestly one of the most fascinating connections in the entire deep dive. So, in Leviticus 16, we see the instructions for the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. The high priest takes 2 goats. One is sacrificed to cleanse the sanctuary. The other goat, the famous scapegoat, has all the sins and rebellions of the Israelite nation symbolically placed upon its head, and it is driven out into the wilderness. But the Hebrew text includes a highly specific detail. The goat is sent la Azazel, literally for Azazel.
Which fundamentally changes the meaning of the entire ritual.
Completely.
The ancient Israelites were not just sending a goat into the desert to wander around aimlessly. They were performing a ritual of return. By placing their sins on the goat and sending it la Azazel, they were packaging up all the corruption, all the violence of the swords, and all the vanity of the makeup, and mailing it back to the specific demonic origin point.
And we were actively returning the trauma of civilization back to the being who illicitly transferred it to them in the first place.
A return to send.
Exactly. It is a profound theological statement of rejecting that corrupted timeline. Which brings up the inevitable question. If this knowledge was so devastating, if writing enabled immortal lies and metallurgy enabled endless wars, what did the divine realm actually do about the beings who leaked the cosmic source code? How do you even punish crime that permanently alters the trajectory of a whole species?
Well, the divine response is uniquely structured around containment rather than immediate destruction.
Okay.
The archangels are deployed to execute a highly specific sentencing. Raphael is commanded to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into a dark desert pit full of sharp, jagged rocks, a place called Dudeo.
Sounds awful.
It's meant to be.
Right.
And Michael is sent to arrest Samyaza and the other faction leaders, binding them in the valleys of the earth for 70 generations.
And the mechanics of that punishment, being bound in darkness under the earth pending a final judgment, is the exact framework that gives birth to the concept of Tartarus, later seen in New Testament texts like 2 Peter and Jude.
Right, the eternal chains in gloomy darkness.
Yes. But the punishment is not solely physical. There's a deeply psychological, almost tragic layer to Samyaza's sentence in particular. Before he is chained in the earth, the archangels force him to watch the destruction of his own children.
The Nephilim.
Yeah. The text details that the Watchers took human wives, and the offspring of those illicit unions were the giants, the Nephilim. These beings were the living embodiments of the collapsed developmental timeline.
Just massive, chaotic consumers.
Exactly. They devoured all the agricultural produce of humanity, and when the humans could no longer feed them, the Nephilim turned on the humans and eventually began cannibalizing each other.
It's just total ecological collapse.
It is, and Samyaza's punishment mandates that he witness the slaughter of his own sons. It adds a strange nuance to his character, right? He clearly possessed paternal love, yet his own calculated conspiracy set in motion the necessity of their eradication. And the death of the Nephilim creates yet another prominent alteration to the human reality. Because they are hybrid beings, half celestial and half terrestrial, the Enochian tradition dictates that their spirits cannot ascend to the heavenly realm,
Right.
nor can they peacefully rest in the earth. So what happens to them?
They become trapped in the terrestrial sphere. Their disembodied spirits remain to roam the post-flood world. This serves as the ancient world's functional explanation for the origin of demons and evil spirits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are the ghost remnants of the Nephilim, continuing the work of their fathers by afflicting humanity.
The internal logic of this cosmology is incredibly intricate. But panning the camera out to look at the broader ancient world reveals something even more staggering, I think. This highly specific narrative structure, like a divine being crossing a boundary, transferring identical technologies, and being bound to rocks as punishment, it's not isolated to this one text.
Not at all.
It appears across multiple ancient cultures that had no clear mechanism for sharing these stories.
The convergence is honestly remarkable. If you examine Greek mythology, you find Prometheus,
Right.
a divine being who crosses a cosmic boundary to steal fire, which, keep in mind, is the absolute foundational technology required for metallurgy and complex civilization.
He gives it to humanity prematurely.
And his punishment is to be chained to a rock in a desolate place.
It is the exact same blueprint as Azazel in Dudeo.
Exactly the same.
And the parallels extend into Mesopotamian culture as well, particularly the Sumerian tradition, right?
Yes. In Sumerian myth, you have the Apkallu. These were 7 divine sages who emerged from the primordial waters to bring humanity the arts of civilization. If you look at the syllabus of what the Apkallu taught, it is identical: metallurgy, writing, and astronomy.
I want you to really let the weight of that sink in. Multiple distinct ancient civilizations independently mythologize the exact same structural trauma. A divine being crosses a threshold, hands over identical technologies, writing, metal, stars, and alters human history.
It forces a total reevaluation of how these myths formed. We really have to consider how different cultures uniquely interpreted a shared, deeply buried memory of a sudden traumatic leap in human capability.
Right, because they view it differently.
They do. The Sumerians viewed the Apkallu somewhat positively, as bringers of necessary civilization, while the Enochian authors viewed the Watchers as the architects of doom. But the core memory of the illicit tech transfer remains perfectly intact across the cultural divides.
Synthesizing this entire journey, we move from the premeditated corporate-style conspiracy on the summit of Mount Hermon to the premature gifting of swords, cosmetics, and ink, to the ultimate binding of the Watchers in the dark pits of the earth. It is an ancient processing of the trauma of sudden progress.
That's exactly what it is.
The ancient mind looked at the tools that separated them from the animals and realized that power, without a moral framework to contain it, is fundamentally destructive.
They recognize the extreme danger of tools that outpace wisdom. When humanity learns to extract resources for weapons before learning diplomacy, or learns to fix testimony and writing before mastering truth, the society inevitably fractures.
Which is exactly why this ancient text feels so undeniably urgent for us today. We are living through our own explosion of new magic. We are mapping and editing the human genome. We are building artificial intelligence that can mimic and manipulate human thought at scale.
We're doing it right now.
We are. And if you listen closely to the debates happening around modern tech boardroom tables, they are the exact same debates Samyaza and the Watchers had on Mount Hermon. We are constantly asking ourselves if we possess the moral maturity to wield what we are creating, or if we are actively collapsing our own developmental timeline.
We are still wrestling with the legacy of Azazel and Penemue. We possess the metallurgy to literally destroy the planet, and we possess the digital writing and algorithms to deceive the entire globe simultaneously.
It's terrifying.
The ancient texts leave us confronting the possibility that our relentless technological acceleration might not be a testament to our brilliance, but a symptom of an ancient corruption.
So I want to leave you with a lingering question to mull over as you go about your day. Holding your smartphone, driving your metal car, and participating in this highly complex civilization. If the ancient world genuinely believed that our foundational technologies, the very things we proudly point to as evidence of being civilized, were actually the artifacts of a cosmic crime, what does that say about the true nature of human progress? Are we ascending through our own inherent brilliance? Or are we, as we worried at the very beginning of this deep dive, just toddlers playing with tools we were never meant to have?